If you think you're immune to emotional damage just because you're strong, disciplined, or successful, you're not. Good men don't get destroyed by weakness, they get destroyed by loyalty. By trying to save a woman who doesn't take responsibility for her own behavior. By giving chance after chance to someone who keeps crossing lines. And it always starts subtle. A little disrespect here, a little withdrawal there. But eventually, it changes you. If you've been feeling drained, unfocused, or strangely disconnected from yourself, listen closely. I'm about to expose the 10 ways women destroy good men, and why most men never notice the danger until it's already inside them. I've watched countless men get dismantled the same way, and I'm telling you this as someone who understands both sides of the emotional game. Women don't break good men with one blow. They do it through habits, expectations, and patterns most men never question. But once you understand these patterns, everything changes. Before we go deeper, make sure you like and subscribe. Let me guide you with the clarity most men never get. Now let's start with the first behavior that quietly drains a man's sense of worth. Number 1. Unrealistic expectations. Most good men don't break because they're weak. They break because they spend too long trying to meet standards that were never meant to be met in the first place. And I want you to hear this clearly. Today's expectations aren't coming from a real woman sitting across from you. They're coming from an online fantasy she's been taught to chase. You're living in a world where a man is expected to be emotionally present like a therapist, financially capable like a CEO, physically built like an athlete, and endlessly attentive like he has no life of his own. That's not love. That's performance. And when she starts treating you like a checklist instead of a human being, something inside you begins to fracture. You start stretching yourself thinner. You try harder. You give more. And the more you give, the more invisible you feel because the standard keeps rising. It's never enough. Not because you're inadequate, but because the target was never real. Women who chase perfection don't want a partner. They want a projection, and a projection can never love you back. But here's the part that really destroys good men. You don't see the damage happening. You think that if you just improve a little more, work a little harder, become a little better, she'll finally be satisfied. Instead, you lose pieces of yourself trying to fit an ideal that doesn't even exist. A man doesn't break when he fails. He breaks when he abandons himself trying to be everything for someone who can't be pleased. When her expectations stop being human, your love stops being sustainable. Number 2. Overdependence. There's a difference between a woman who chooses you and a woman who leans on you because she can't stand on her own. And most good men fail to see that difference until they're already carrying the full weight of someone else's life on their shoulders. When a woman uses you as her emotional rescue center, her financial fallback plan, and her constant source of validation, she's not building a relationship with you. She's attaching herself to you because she doesn't know how to hold herself together. And at first, you mistake it for closeness. You think you're being needed. But what's really happening is much darker. You're becoming her foundation, her oxygen, her stability, while she gives you nothing to stand on in return. Over time, that dependency drains you. It turns every conversation into a crisis, every disagreement into a collapse, every responsibility into your burden. You're no longer her partner. You're her lifeline. And lifelines don't get rest. They don't get support. They don't get reciprocity. They just get pulled on until they snap. What makes this so destructive is that you keep trying to fix it. You keep trying to solve problems she was supposed to solve herself. But no matter how much you do, the emptiness in her life never gets smaller. It only grows, and it keeps consuming more of you. A woman who refuses to stand on her own will eventually bring you down to her level, not because she hates you, but because she can't rise. And the harder you try to lift her, the deeper you sink. This is how good men burn out. Not from lack of love, but from becoming responsible for a life that was never theirs to carry. Number 3, lack of appreciation. A good man doesn't need applause. He doesn't need a parade, but he does need to feel seen. And the moment a woman begins treating his effort like background noise, something inside him quietly starts to shut down. Men love inaction. They show up. They solve problems. They protect, provide, and support in ways that aren't always flashy, but are always consistent. But consistency has a hidden curse. People start assuming it's automatic. They stop noticing the little things, the things you think don't matter, but actually hold the entire relationship together. When a woman becomes entitled to your effort, she stops valuing it. When she stops valuing it, she stops acknowledging it. And when she stops acknowledging it, you become invisible in your own relationship. This isn't just about not saying thank you. It's about the emotional erosion that happens when everything you do gets minimized, dismissed, or taken for granted. Over time, you begin questioning your worth. You wonder if you're loved or if you're simply convenient. You start asking yourself why you keep giving when nothing comes back. And here's the truth most men avoid. A woman who cannot appreciate consistency will always chase chaos. She won't recognize stability because she never learned how to value it. So she focuses on your flaws instead of your efforts, your mistakes instead of your intentions. You're not asking for worship. You're asking for acknowledgement. And when that disappears, your sense of love, pride, and purpose disappears with it. Men don't walk away because they stopped caring. They walk away because they spent too long caring alone. Number 4, communication breakdown. Men aren't destroyed by what they know. They're destroyed by what they're never told. And one of the most common ways a good man gets worn down is when a woman expects him to read her mind instead of using her voice. You've probably been there. She pulls away, but doesn't explain. She gets upset, but won't say why. She wants something, but refuses to express it. Yet somehow, you're responsible for knowing the need she never shared, solving the problem she never identified, and apologizing for the mistake you never knew you made. This isn't love. It's emotional sabotage disguised as, you should understand me. Women who avoid direct communication don't do it because they're mysterious. They do it because keeping you in the dark gives them emotional leverage. When you're confused, you try harder. When you're unsure, you overcompensate. And the more you chase clarity, the more she withholds it. Slowly, you stop feeling capable. You stop feeling grounded. Every step becomes guesswork. Every word becomes a potential trigger. And every day feels like you're trying not to fail a test you were never given the questions to. Men don't crumble from pressure. They crumble from uncertainty. And a relationship built on unspoken expectations becomes a battlefield where you're always the one taking the blame. The worst part? You start believing her silence is your fault. That if you were better, more intuitive, more sensitive, you'd somehow just know. No, you're not failing. You're functioning in a system designed to break you. A man can carry weight, but no man can carry confusion forever. Number 5, manipulative behavior. There's a specific kind of woman who won't confront you directly. She won't say what she wants, and she won't own what she feels. Instead, she'll twist the emotional atmosphere until you feel guilty for breathing wrong. And the worst part? Good men fall for it every time because they assume the problem must be them. Manipulation doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It shows up in subtle guilt trips like, if you really cared, you'd know. Or emotional rewrites like, I never said that. You're imagining things. It appears when she plays the victim after causing the damage, turning every argument into a performance where she walks away innocent and you walk away ashamed. This kind of woman is not looking for truth. She's looking for control. And the easiest way to control a good man is to make him doubt his own reality. You start apologizing for things you didn't do. You suppress your needs because hers always seem more fragile. You shrink your voice because hers turns into a weapon when challenged. Little by little, your confidence erodes. Not because you're wrong, but because you've been conditioned to question yourself. You begin tiptoeing around her emotions, censoring your thoughts, altering your behavior, not to avoid conflict, but to avoid being blamed for things you never caused. Manipulation works best on men with empathy. And that's why it destroys good men first. When a woman rewrites the truth to protect her ego, she's not preserving the relationship. She's dismantling your identity. And if you stay too long, you won't just lose the argument. You'll lose the ability to trust your own judgment. Number 6, neglecting physical intimacy. For a man, physical intimacy isn't just a moment. It's a message. It tells him he's wanted, valued, and connected. It reassures him that the bond between you and her is alive, not just in theory, but in action. So when a woman begins withdrawing that connection without explanation, the impact cuts far deeper than most people realize. She might insist she's just tired, not in the mood, or going through something. And yes, everyone has off days. But you know when it stops being occasional and becomes a pattern. You feel it the first time she pulls away. And you feel it even more when she stops touching you entirely unless she wants something from you. What you're experiencing isn't the lack of intimacy, it's the lack of desire. And that is what breaks good men on the inside. Because men translate physical closeness into emotional closeness. When she stops reaching for you, stops leaning into you, stops acknowledging your existence beyond what you provide, a quiet emptiness starts forming. At first, you question yourself. Is it my appearance? Am I doing something wrong? Did I stop being attractive to her? But the truth is simpler and more painful. Intimacy turned into a bargaining chip, a tool, a reward she can give or withhold based on her mood, her frustration, or her need for leverage. And that kind of dynamic doesn't just starve your body, it starves your spirit. It makes you feel undesirable in the one place you should feel most accepted. A relationship cannot survive when a man is treated like an accessory to be touched only when convenient. It's not the absence of intimacy that destroys him. It's the realization that his presence no longer awakens hers. Number 7, constant criticism. A man can survive stress. He can survive pressure, conflict, responsibility, and even failure. But what he cannot survive is a relationship where he is treated like he is perpetually falling short. And constant criticism is exactly that. A slow, deliberate erosion of a man's sense of worth. It doesn't start with shouting. It starts with small, cutting remarks. You never do it right. Why can't you just be more like, I shouldn't have to tell you this? Little jabs that seem harmless at first, until they accumulate into a daily reminder that nothing you do is ever good enough. A woman who criticizes constantly isn't trying to help you grow. She's trying to shape you into something that matches her script. And the more you adjust, correct, and contort yourself to meet her demands, the more she finds new flaws to focus on. Because criticism isn't about improvement, it's about control. The tragedy is that good men take criticism personally. You internalize it. You try harder. You put in more effort, thinking that if you just fix the problem, the tension will disappear. But it never does, because the problem was never you. It was her inability to value you as you are. Constant criticism rewires a man's mind. He stops expressing opinions. He stops initiating. He stops taking risks. Eventually, he stops being himself altogether, because the safest version of you is the quiet, compliant version she can't attack. And that's how good men disappear. Not physically, but emotionally. Not because they stopped caring, but because they've been slowly convinced that their presence causes more harm than good. A man doesn't shut down because he's weak. He shuts down because he's tired of being told he's not enough. Number 8. Failure to support your ambitions. Every man carries a vision, some dream he's building quietly, piece by piece, even when no one else sees the blueprint. And the woman he chooses is supposed to be the person who stands beside him while he brings that vision to life. But when she dismisses your ambitions, mocks your goals, or treats your dreams like an inconvenience, something inside you begins to collapse. At first, you brush it off. It's just a comment. She didn't mean it like that. She's just stressed. But you feel the sting. You feel the hesitation in your own voice when you talk about the things that matter to you. You feel the shift when her lack of support turns your passion into a private burden instead of a shared journey. A woman who can't believe in your dreams will slowly teach you to stop believing in them yourself. And this is where so many good men lose the very fire that makes them who they are. You begin scaling back your plans to avoid conflict. You shrink your ambition so it doesn't intimidate her. You silence your excitement because it invites criticism instead of support. Eventually, you start living small, not because you want to, but because she benefits when you stay average. What most men don't realize is this. Lack of support is a form of emotional isolation. It tells you, without words, you're on your own. And no man can thrive when the person he loves most becomes the person who doubts him most. A partner who can't respect your purpose does not deserve access to your future. A woman who won't stand with you will eventually stand in your way. Number 9. Jealousy and insecurity. A woman's insecurity doesn't just sit quietly in the background, it expands. It grows legs, grows claws, and eventually grows control over every corner of your life. And the more insecure she is, the more she tries to manage you instead of managing herself. At first it seems harmless. She asks who you're texting. She questions where you're going. She wants reassurance, a little validation. But insecurity rarely stays small. It becomes suspicion. It becomes surveillance. It becomes a slow suffocation disguised as love. You start noticing the changes. Your phone suddenly becomes a source of tension. Your friendships become threats. Your independence becomes a problem. And somehow, the burden falls on you to calm fears you didn't create. But here's the psychological truth. Insecurity is self-focused. It isn't about you. It's about her fear of losing control, her fear of abandonment, her fear of not being enough. And instead of dealing with those fears internally, she manages them externally by managing you. The tragedy is that good men tolerate this far too long, not because they like being controlled, but because they mistake insecurity for emotional depth. They think, she cares about me, when really she cares about avoiding the discomfort inside herself. Over time, her insecurity becomes your prison. Every move you make is questioned. Every relationship you have is examined. Every boundary you set is treated like betrayal. And slowly, without even noticing it, you stop being yourself just to keep the peace. A man loses his identity one compromise at a time. Not because he's weak, but because he's tired of fighting battles that were never his to fight. Love does not require you to walk on eggshells, control does. Number 10. Comparing him to others. There's a silent kind of cruelty that doesn't involve yelling, insults, or direct attacks. It's the moment a woman looks at you and says, explicitly or implicitly, someone else is better. And no matter how confident a man is, comparison cuts deeper than almost anything else a partner can do. It usually starts casually. She mentions how her ex used to do certain things, how her coworker is more ambitious, how another man is more affectionate, more driven, more attentive, more something. She drops these comments like they mean nothing, but to a man who loves her, they land like blows. Comparison doesn't push you to grow. It pushes you to shrink. It makes you second-guess your strengths while chasing standards that were never meant for you. A woman who constantly compares you isn't trying to inspire you. She's trying to mold you into a version that makes her feel superior, admired, or validated. And the more you try to compete with ghosts, the more you lose your sense of self. Because you're no longer living as the man you are. You're living as the man she keeps implying you should become. Over time, comparison rewires your identity. You stop trusting your judgment. You stop taking pride in your achievements. You become hyper-aware of every flaw because she trained you to look at yourself through the lens of inadequacy. But here's the truth. A woman who values you will never weaponize other men against you. She'll protect your confidence, not puncture it. She'll encourage your growth, not shame your pace. Comparison doesn't create better men. It creates broken ones. And the moment you start believing that someone else is inherently better than you, you've already abandoned yourself. A good man doesn't fall apart in one moment. He doesn't break because of one argument, one mistake, or one woman. He breaks because he's been slowly chipped away by a series of small wounds he was too loyal to acknowledge. One silent dismissal, one unfair comparison, one withheld affection. One more moment where he told himself, it's not a big deal. But it is a big deal, because every time you tolerate a behavior that drains you, you teach yourself to accept less than you deserve. And over time, that acceptance turns into a habit. That habit becomes a pattern. And that pattern becomes the version of you that's barely recognizable. The man who used to lead, now doubting himself. The man who used to stand tall, now walking on eggshells. The man who used to have direction, now living in emotional survival mode. You weren't meant to live like that. If you saw yourself in any of these 10 patterns, understand this. Nothing changes until you change. A woman will only treat you with the level of respect you enforce. Your boundaries, your standards, your expectations, they're not optional. They're the guardrails protecting your identity. You have the right to walk away. You have the right to rebuild. And you have the right to choose a relationship that strengthens you instead of shrinking you. You were not created to be worn down. You were created to lead. If this message hit you somewhere you've been trying to ignore, make sure you subscribe. There are truths you need to hear, and I'll keep giving them to you. Unfiltered, honest, and from a woman who knows exactly how the game works. Like this video if it woke something up in you. Share it with the men who need it. And tell me in the comments which truth hit the hardest.